Welcome to Design Muse Podcast, a podcast meant to inspire, educate, and advocate on all things commercial interior design. I am your co-host, Bridget Santos.
And I'm Melanie Hanna.
We are Design Muse Podcast. Welcome back to Design Muse Podcast. We are so excited today to have in the Tangram technology team. We will be talking all things about technology integration, how AI is affecting technology, what these consultants need from interior designers. So welcome on.
All right. So today we have Rob and Scott here with Tangram Technology. You guys want to do a little intro for yourself?
Rob Barganier. I've been in the AV industry for about 22 years. Started off in production and venue space, and then got into integration about 12 years ago.
My name's Scott, Birdsong. I've been in the business a lot longer than Rob. So I've been in 30 plus years. Most of my life, I've been in the business. And like Rob, I started on the production side, rock and roll, touring, things like that, and then realized it wasn't really the life for me. So I got into the install side of it, the permanent kind of technology. So I'm here at Tangram. I am over the operations side of things for the technology team, and Rob is an account manager here in Dallas.
We're so excited to have you guys. Can you tell us and tell the listeners a little bit about Tangram specifically before we dive into the nuts and bolts of lessons learned? We have listeners, by the way, in 20 countries.
Wow. That's
Isn't
cool.
that crazy?
Yeah,
So some folks may not know what Tangram is. I've never heard of Tangram and the different entities that you guys have.
Tangram, we're a steel case line dealer. We've been in the business for about 60 years and started offering technology about 18 years ago. It's unique in the fact that we approach it holistically, right? Instead of just looking at the furniture or looking at the technology, our teams collaborate behind the scenes, talk walls, different surfaces, reflection of that, and we can really understand the space so that what Scott and I are designing on a project worked well with not only the tech spec, but also the things in the room that we're usually not looking at.
So it's really a holistic approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the advantage that we have has been, rather than just being an independent, AV integrator or technology integrator, there's a huge advantage to being a part of that Tangram team where we've got, furniture and walls and carpet and the whole, the aesthetics of the room, the design of the room or the space in general, being able to collaborate closely with those folks because technology has just become such a huge part of doing business that it's great to be able to reach across the hall and say, hey, I got a question about this from a design standpoint, rather than just being, in another building somewhere in another company where we don't really have insight on some of those design things. So there's an advantage there. So we're excited to be a part of Tangram.
And what's funny is our last podcast, Mel did a little round kind of what do you think the biggest complaint is in the hospitality world? And it had nothing to do with the design of the lobby or the rooms or the finishes. It all had to do with technology.
Really, yeah.
And Wi-Fi connections. Technology is a huge component into how somebody feels a space, operates in a space, and enjoys the space.
For the longest time in design, when we would bring up technology, people, clients or consultant, whoever, if they didn't know anything about technology, they thought we were only talking about TVs. And there's such a breadth of that. It's huge, right? Mm-hmm. There's low voltage, there's cabling, and no longer is it just hidden. I think that there's been a lot of advances in celebrating some of it too in spaces, right. Especially in workplace. I've seen where, hey, the cable trays are no longer just like this ugly cable tray. They might be painted orange because that's part of the aesthetic of seeing behind the scenes of where everything is running from. And I think it's changing in AVL is another part of it that I would like to talk today about because that's a huge thing. Having you guys on early, I am all for it. We just kicked off a project a few weeks ago and I said, who's our technology consultant? Right. And it has, this is a multifamily project and it has restaurants and, but who's our technology consultant? And day one asking that, and everybody should be asking that. Our very first podcast that we launched was with Christina Fisher. She at the time was at Toll Brothers. That was one of the things that she brought up with technology. Construction, you get to the end and you realize, My goodness, I wish I would have brought on technology sooner. It affects every single sector. It's not just one sector specific. And let's go round table. And I'd like to hear from both of you on what are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced as a technology consultant.
Kind of starting off, it's kind of like you mentioned before, AV and technology has kind of always been an afterthought. And I think that's the biggest challenge right now is getting in early enough to where we can have those discussions about, pathways and furniture placement and, where the wall is going to be and all of this stuff because it matters. The technology has got to be integrated into the space. There's got to be infrastructure there's got to be a power and data and all the things to make it all happen. And if we're not in those conversations early, it's just going to cost the client so much more in the end to go back and redo because exactly that. You're like, oh, I forgot that we were going to do this, right? From a challenge standpoint, we always wish we were kind of in sooner.
Rather than later. What about you, Rob?
I'm going to echo that. Early on in my career, we had a large multi-floor project where the initial design of the AV didn't need a conduit from behind the TV box to the floor core at the table. Management changed, and that manager wanted something at the table that couldn't happen unless conduit was added. We wrote up a change order to add those devices to the table. It was something like $200,000 because it was a lot of rooms, right? We're talking hundreds of rooms. But the GC's change order, after walls are painted and when we're ready to deploy, it was over $1 million. So the AV manager didn't get what they wanted. And ever since then, it's one of the things I do on every single call is I just recommend it, even if it's not needed, because technology changes. People's need change. Today, you could be using a Teams room, and next week you're going to use a Zoom room. Having that infrastructure there allows you to play with that without having physical construction. And the cheapest time to install it is during the physical construction.
So basically, if that box just had a blank conduit, just a pathway, when we say pathway, we're saying blank conduit. Where we call it ring and string.
Yep.
You guys. So basically you can pull things back through. It doesn't cost very much to do it in the very beginning, just to run it anyways. That right there is one of the things that's on my list where I'm going to go ahead when stuff like that happens. It's on my list and it's a non-negotiable. It is in my documents.
Absolutely.
We're going to have this. And if we start, because when you start talking about VE, that's pennies on the dollar with value engineering, and it prevents so much headache. And not just for that client, but if they move and somebody moves in, because that happens a lot, especially in workplace projects where you come in and yes, they have floor cores, but it's just all it is a power. Like that's it. And so there's no connectivity to, well, how are we going to reflect on the TV or whatever? And so there's a lot of different considerations there specifically. For sure.
We just did a project for a property management group recently, and we did a cost analysis because they were already going to have a floor core. Right? I mean, electrical dictates that, but they did not have a conduit from behind the TV to the TV, and they wanted to do BYOD. So we positioned a wireless solution, and that wireless solution was something like $2,000 for just the product. And the conduit pathway from behind the TV to the box, I think, was like $700.
Okay, so let's back up because a lot of our listeners are not in design. They are just curious about design. What is BYOD? I think I know what it is.
Right.
It's like bring your own beer, but
It's
like,
bring your own device.
There you go.
So in our world, you can have a different room system in a room. A lot of people are going the route that they're not paying the licensing fee for a Teams room or a Zoom room, and they're hosting the calls off their laptops while using the large TV in the room, the cameras in the room, and the speakers in the room.
Yeah, so it gives you the ability to bring a laptop in for a whether it's an employee or maybe even outside guests that come in that are presenting maybe, or that want to host a call. You've got all this AV technology in the space like cameras and microphones and speakers, but they're all connected to the room, right? So what's cool about BYOD is the ability to bring that laptop in as a guest and just plug in a simple USB connection on the side, and now all of a sudden your laptop sees all the equipment in the room as like a webcam or a speakerphone, and it allows you to host your calls from that and connect to the room. So that's typically what we mean by OD.
Are you guys seeing, instead of a plug-in device, more of, I know some of them have had a code. You scan a QR code, or there might be just a code in general that you type in. But one of the problems that I've seen is that if you're a guest, you have to have a downloaded app already ahead of time. So
Right.
that's something from a client standpoint, I would have to let my client know ahead of time. And most people don't think about that's like they're worried about the presentation.
Sure.
They're not worried about how that kind of thing if somebody needs to log into it and they're in person. So it just kind of depends. But what are you guys seeing the most as far as technology? Let's talk specifically about meeting spaces. I think that's what comes up a lot. But I want to get to even venues. So
Right.
let's just start with meeting spaces, because that's, I think, a very relevant one right now.
So traditionally, back in the old days, you'd bring a laptop in and you would have to have like an HDMI connection and you'd have to find a cable and all of this stuff. And it was always a huge deal. And you'd plug that in and then you'd present whatever's on your laptop up to the screen on the wall. And then over time that HDMI connections kind of changed. It's disappeared on some laptops. So they've gone to a USB type connection, USB-C, something like that. So we had to kind of change our play there and add a connector for USB-C to be able to present. And now people are really like, you know what, I don't want a connector at all because it's going to fail or it's going to break or somebody's going to take the cable and run away with it, or they don't have a laptop that's compatible. So recently what we've seen kind of the trend is to do away with the connections at the table altogether and do it wirelessly, like you're saying. And that can be with some type of device that you plug in.
Like one of the ones that you hit the button. I forget what they're called.
It's a barcode click share.
Right. Click share.
It's probably the most common one. We sell quite a bit of those. There's several other brands and different types of devices that do kind of the same thing. But that's something that you would actually have to plug into a laptop and then hit the button and you're presenting up to the screen, which is cool. But we are seeing a lot of folks that have Teams and Zoom rooms now, like you said, with a QR code or something up on the screen. And we do that a lot with our client, to where really you can just scan that QR code and present wirelessly. And it connects through the building's Wi-Fi or the guest network, something like that.
Which is a really nice option. Have you guys had a lot of the OWL devices where it has a camera on every single one? A few months ago, I had a contractor that had one of those up, and I think a lot of people didn't know that they were being recorded on my end. It was just funny because it's not even looking directly at them. But you can see exactly what they're doing, picking their nose or taking notes or working on something else, whatever.
That's the hardest part about the majority of rooms that we design now. I feel like that everybody wants technology to be invisible or pretty and blend into the space, and they want it to be able to capture everybody, but not everybody understands that, right? There's a large GC firm here in Dallas that deployed some of these mics that we're using in this room, Sennheisers. They had a large board of directors call where the board of directors was presenting to all of the employees, and all the employees were in their Dallas office, and a site super was having a conversation in the back of the room. And one of the big wigs was like, "Hey, shut up. I can hear you."
They're not used to having that amount of technology. And that was the same case with this group. Is not only could I see them, I could very clearly hear everybody at the table, what was being said. So no one was on mute, which was kind of an interesting thing. So I think it's interesting to see where everything's going to pivot to. And I think a lot of things are changing. But it is nice to have that human connection and being able to see someone if you can't physically be there. It doesn't replace the physically being there, in my opinion. But for most of our clients, it's about, is it easy to use? Is it easy for my clients to use?
And anybody they have coming in to use that equipment. Like, that just makes you look better as a company, right? Makes you feel confident whoever's coming in has the ability to share and there's not a lot of moving pieces.
That's the beauty of where we're at right now. Pre-COVID, a lot of people were on video conferencing, but not a lot of people were at the same time. COVID made everybody get accustomed to video conferencing, and it pushed it so much further than where it was.
It was almost like the kind of pre-pandemic. It was dedicated spaces for video conferencing.
Yes.
Like it was very expensive. It was one room and on the floor maybe that had a camera, and you could do video conferencing. And then, like Rob's saying, after, I think, or during the pandemic, all of a sudden everything had to be almost at everybody's desk or at home, right on your laptop or whatnot. So I think that's the big shift that we've seen in the industry, really has has been going from, okay, these very complicated boardroom type solutions with cameras everywhere, and shade controls and lights. All that stuff's really cool. But after the pandemic, people were like, we don't really need that. We just want to be able to connect. Like, we just want to see you on the other end and know that it's going to work when we turn it on. I know that there was a study done a long time ago where they were talking about just the amount of time that was wasted just waiting for a meeting to get set up, just troubleshooting, plugging stuff in, turning things on. And now we've designed systems to where you literally can just walk into the room and it knows who you are. It knows that it's your
Wow.
laptop, and it sets it up. It says, hey, you're ready for your meeting. Just hit go, right? Hit a button and go.
It is amazing
Yeah.
because in our industry, time is money.
Mhm.
Every meeting is money. So there's good and bad about things speeding up. I remember pre-pandemic, I had really only presented to clients in person, and I'm very animated. I love storytelling. I love engaging the
Right.
audience, and I need that human connection. I didn't know that was only 6 years ago. I really had not presented online. And so when I had to pivot to that, I had to reinvent myself a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
because I had to really think about my presentation style, how it was set up. No longer did the format of the presentation, the order of it make sense. We had to kind of pivot a little bit. And I still think every now and then I'm like, do we need to pivot a little more? Because things are speeding up and there's that expectation of, so with the technology side of things, one thing my company has done very well recently is we no longer internally can have an hour-long meeting. You got to at least give people 5 to 10-minute breaks because
Yeah.
to be able to just reset your mind, grab a cup of coffee, go to the bathroom, whatever, check your beard,
Yeah.
whatever.
Exactly. It's
So
beautiful beard.
yes, you have a very beautiful beard, Rob. You're welcome.
I
It's
think so.
always been very nice and even when you grew it like longer.
It's going to go back there.
Is
There
it?
you
Yeah,
go.
that's
We
where
have
it's
a
heading right
question.
now.
This is not about technology, but do you use a certain beard oil?
I do now, and it's not even an oil. It's like a weird little paste thing, but it
Cool.
smells good.
Goodness, wow.
That's a lot
I
of work.
love
I
it.
love it.
I love it. It's a good beard. Those wondering, you'll see his headshot.
Love
He's
it.
got the best beard in technology.
We can brand
Yeah.
that best beard in technology.
Oh my
Well, you guys have talked a little bit about kind of the time and things progressing. How do you keep up and know what's next? How do you keep up with technology and knowing what you're
Yeah.
designing now that's going to be built in 3 or 5 years that's right for that building for
Yeah.
the future?
Some of these projects are long.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
when we
absolutely.
plan something out, we're talking it's going to get built 2 years from now.
Yeah, it's a great point. And that's another advantage to being brought in early, because we can kind of plan and we can see what that looks like. And we have a great relationship with our manufacturers. So all the manufacturers, we're very much partners. There's partnerships there. So we meet on a regular basis where they're coming in saying, hey, here's kind of what that but the equipment's looking like coming down the road. This is the stuff we're working on. We also get a lot of direction from our clients. So, we have clients that are like, man, this is awesome, but we wish it had this feature, or we wish it did something else, right? And then we can go back to them and say, hey, here's some feedback we got. And they'll go in and make those. So it's easier for us, I think, being kind of in it every day, right? To be able to have those conversations. And if we're sitting in a meeting and we're talking about, hey, a project that's going to be maybe 6 or 8 months down the road before we start pulling cable or whatnot, we can plan on that ahead of time. And our team's really good about looking ahead and saying, okay, this is great. And I know this is what the client's asking for, but I know that so-and-so manufacturer is coming out with this. So we're going to at least throw that in there and talk about it, right?
For sure. So on the coordination side, one of the things I always like to coordinate with the technology consultants is, hey, can you send me the cut sheets of things? A lot of those things require blocking or special details,
Absolutely.
or if it's heavy, it requires structural consideration. Or when you talk about pathways, there's been sometimes where it's like, there's a grade beam right
Mhm.
there and you can't go through that.
Right.
It's like that book, is it Dora, where you can't go through it, so you got to go over it or under it.
Right.
And it's one of those things I think a lot of designers, shockingly, haven't really coordinated a lot with technology and understand that level of coordination. Do you guys have any advice for design teams? I think we were talking before this started. Technology impacts everybody.
Absolutely
The
right.
end user, the guest, the interior designer, the architect, the MEP, could be structural. So there's a lot of coordination that has to happen with that. So what would you advise?
I think having a solid foundation is the best plan. I think we've touched on it a few different times, especially with you mentioning technology changing so fast. How do we keep up with it? We're working on a very large project that's not going to be done for like another 4 years. And the most important thing right now is conduit and TV backing, because the TVs are going to change size, right? Every manufacturer likes to change the TV from a 75 to a 77 or a 75 to an 80, whatever year it is, something like that is going to change. But if we plan and have a strong foundation for a TV there, a larger TV with conduit pathways where we need them to be, speaker cable routes where they need to be, where they're going to look clean, we can always change the speaker out. We can always change the TV out. The brains of the system are going to change, but not too much, right? And that gives us the ability to just say, hey, here's the basis foundation for everything. All these other things are probably going to change a little bit, right? And there's got to be an understanding that that will most likely happen too, which I think a lot of people are very open to hearing, right? Like, hey, we're going to be covered from an infrastructure standpoint. The experience may change a little bit, but we'll work with the end user to make sure that that's good. And then the fit and finish is what you guys want. Because I think that's the key to success here is the technology is changing every day. The good point about where we're at is most of it's software related as opposed to a physical device changing. So as long as we can get that foundation started the right way, we're in a really good spot.
So you brought up speakers. A lot of people don't necessarily think of speakers when they think of technology, but speakers can make and break a project, from the layout of them not being centered on something, to depends on the type of space, right? If it's a meeting space, the speakers and the mics are important. Are they in the table? Are they in the ceiling? Are they pinpointed above everybody's head and you can hear that person talking crap about the receptionist or whatever side table conversations? And the speakers, fitness centers, and I mean, there's a lot that has to do with that. I love your sound system that you guys have in your Tangram Dallas showroom, because I think it's really cool how it adjusts to the sound of I guess the reverb in the room. Is it about like the loudness
Ambient
of the
level.
room?
Yeah, just
And has
chatter and all of that
all
stuff.
the controls. I just mind blown whenever I saw that. And plus the screen helps. It's really cool that you guys have the monitor
cool,
with
cool big
that
TV.
shows the little hot zones for everything. But a lot of people don't even know that's out there.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
When we're communicating to like an architect or designer, when people are kind of laying out a space, I think from a design standpoint, you're always looking at things like air conditioning events. You're looking at lights, like can lights, and making sure they're lined up and all. They never think about speakers. Like
Never.
and then somebody, right. And then somebody else from maybe the IT team or the AV, or maybe you've got an AV consultant that mentions it during a design meeting. We're like, oh yeah, we're going to put speakers in here, right? And then all of a sudden that throws everything off. So I think it's something that is definitely something I would put on the radar. And what's great about having someone like us, a design build firm that can come in and has the experience, is we can immediately say, hey, don't worry about it. We've got options. We don't have to put speakers in the ceiling. We can put speakers in the wall. In this room that we're sitting in now, there's no speakers in the ceiling. We chose to put them behind some fabric on the walls.
No idea that those had speakers behind them.
So that's the idea. So what's interesting about this space, and I know that maybe we could show pictures or whatnot, but we've got acoustic panels in the space that absorb sound, right? So acoustically, that's something else we probably should talk about, is how important that is for a room, a conference room. So we've got to be able to absorb sound, but we would like to also be able to hide speakers behind the same type of fabric and panels. So we've got solutions for that. If they don't want to see ugly speakers in the ceiling, or they don't want to see microphones on the table or wires on the table, we can come up with solutions. But if that conversation is not taking place, then it's always just an afterthought, or it's a guess later, right? Another thing I was going to mention about from a design standpoint, when you've got a designer that's kind of putting together a space for a client, and the client says, hey, oh, by the way, we need AV in the room. We need to have a conference call or whatever. Okay, well, we'll just put a TV down at the end of the room, but we're going to make it fit within the design of the space. Maybe it's going in between some shelves or some paintings or some type of built into to the architecture there. There's a lot of science and technology, there's a lot of calculations, I guess, that goes behind the size of that TV and the distance and what type of contents that's going to be presented. All of that's very, very important to determine the right size display for that room. If you've got a boardroom that's got a long traditional boardroom table, for instance, that's usually a pretty good size room in the larger rooms. And, I always say that typically the most quote unquote important person in the room during a big board meeting is at the very furthest end of the room away from the TV. So you're talking about the size of that TV matters. So it's important to have that conversation ahead of time and be able to say, okay, well, hang on. I know you want to put a TV down there, but it's going to have to be a 136-inch TV. How are we going to, incorporate that into the design of the space? Yeah.
With the credenza.
With the credenza and the nice
ceiling height
glass
that you have.
shelves and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's definitely an important
How do you guys feel
conversation.
about the 2 monitor situation? I know Rob and I've had clients that have asked for it, and we're like, why do you want to? Or because that's not actually the best solution for you, and talking about size. So when do you guys recommend that or not? Because one other part of that before you guys answer, I've actually had a client want it. We want the same content on there. At the same time, I'm like, you don't want to show 2 different things? They're like, no. So they don't know how to use it
Yeah, right.
either. So what are your thoughts on that, and what advice do you have on that?
90% of the time, it's a preference thing. Let me rephrase that. When you're going single screen and you're doing it in a video conferencing space, right? A portion of that digital real estate, the TV, portion of the TV is going to be cut out so that you can see the far end participants and your a self view and all that stuff. And that's sort of dictated by the UC. And UC is the Unified Communication. So Teams or Zoom or Google or Blue Jeans or whatever it is. So we can always size up the TV so that your content, the font of your content, depending on if you're looking at analytical or just marketing information, that is accurate to the farthest participant in the room. Or you want a dedicated screen to the far end people. That's really what it comes down to is, do you want to see people on one screen and your content full size on the other? Or are you okay with your content on one screen, people on the same screen? And then we may, depending on the farthest view of the room, say, let's bump up the TV 10 inches. That way you're still getting that whole screen experience for the
That
content.
makes sense.
All right, so I have a little bit different answer because Rob is an amazing salesperson and he wants to make the client happy all the time. I come from a design background and I would nerd out on this stuff. And I think 2 displays is just, it's not a great idea. It's dumb, really.
I think so too. I didn't want to say that. I wanted to hear. I always get people complaining about them afterward.
I have a technical reason, not just because I think it's dumb, because there's a reason. So when we're back to what I was talking about, there's math involved on determining that size of that display because of text size and viewing distances and all of that. We actually calculate that off of the furthest viewer in the room. So we take that distance to that furthest viewer and we say, okay, what's that distance look like? And that might be 30 feet. It may be 40 feet, right? So there's actually some science behind that on what that display height needs to be. So most TVs nowadays, most displays nowadays are 16 by 9 format. They're not square. You've got some that are extra wide and all of that. But traditionally, or I guess, the standard is 16 by 9 format. So what that means is that the height is important. And I always use this as an example. You could have a TV that is, let's say it's 100 feet wide, but it's only 4 feet tall, right? You're still only going to be able to view the text on that from 6 feet away or 4 feet away, right? It's still going to be very small text. It may be super wide, but that's not going to help you any. So my point in saying all that is, if you've got real estate, on a wall and you're trying to put 2 TVs on that wall, they're going to be small TVs or smaller TVs, unless you've got just a ton of wall space. That viewing distance doesn't change because you now have 2 TVs. A lot of people think, just automatically they go, well, hey, we've got 2 TVs. That means that I can see it from further back. And it's not the case. It's still a single TV, next to another single TV. So the font height is still the same. So you still have trouble seeing. So a lot of times people will just naturally go, we like 2 TVs because, we want to be able to see it from the back. It doesn't work that way. What I recommend, what we really typically recommend is to do, like Rob was saying, a large format display, something as big as you can get it in the room for that viewing distance that's required there. And then through technology, we can put the far end video view of the far end participants on the screen, or we can put the near end, your view if you want to see it, or the presentation that's being presented up on the screen. And we can window that out kind of picture in picture style so that we can make it all work on the same TV. And when we've talked through that with the client, all of a sudden the light bulb goes off and they go, oh yeah, well that makes sense.
It's cool. They didn't
Right.
know it was a thing.
Yeah, right.
So we've been speaking a little bit about the audio visual side from more of a meeting space type thing. A lot of people don't even realize whenever you get into more of a event venue type spaces. So this could be a large auditorium. I've designed like 3,200 seat churches, which are like humongous. So the AVL or the technology consultant is one of the most important people that I would coordinate with on those projects.
Yeah.
Down to the detail of the subwoofers underneath the stage is so critical. And then how do you hide that? Typically we were hiding them.
Right.
So how are you hiding them? And does that rattle? Does it not rattle? And so do you guys work on those types of spaces too that are more of like performance space?
We have in the past, and we've done a lot of, I guess, like design and consulting type support there. Our California team has done a ton of stuff in broadcast and production film, large venues, things like that. And it's really the same type of questions that are being asked about, do I have a pathway? Do I have conduit in the right place? Do we have enough power? But you're on a much larger scale. Now
What
you're
are
talking, the acoustics of the room are huge.
Spot on. I would say equally with technology, the acoustics in the room and how that sound bounces off of things or doesn't is very important based on the type of space. So yeah, it's definitely an important, it's all integrated in. For this last portion of our podcast, what is some of the things that you really want our listeners to hear?
And if you've integrated AI into anything, I know that that's a huge topic these days and technology.
There's to touch on AI real quick. We get asked that quite a bit about how it's being integrated into. And keep in mind, like we've talked about a lot of the video conferencing spaces and the meeting spaces, but as far as when we're talking about workplace technology as a whole, we are involved in everything from the access control, security cameras, the acoustics, like you said, of the room. So there's a lot of that, and it might be things like you were talking about before with background music or things like sound masking. All of those things kind of fall into that technology umbrella, and of course AI is a huge part of that right now. So, we're seeing it being built into cameras in conference rooms. If we've got a background music system that's here in the showroom, and we've done this for clients as well. And we also have sound masking for the work area, the open workspaces. But what we've realized is that if you've got a large crowd, maybe we're doing a tour in the showroom, you've got a lot of people, or maybe you've got a client's got a huge staff that's coming in, and there's a lot of busy stuff going on, and people are very loud. Eventually, the kind of the ambient volume level of all the talking and chatter and all of that stuff raises in the room, right, naturally. So in order for the sound masking to be effective or the background music to be effective, it actually has to follow that. It has to be a little bit louder than everybody that's in the room. So we have AI components that are built into the system here and that we've done for our client where it'll monitor that. There's little microphones in the room. We don't like to call them microphones because, they're audio sensors. We're not listening what
They're not
saying.
recording it.
Yeah. So what it does is it monitors that level in the room. And when that ambient noise level kind of raises, then it just automatically raises above it. So it's a lot of automation there. But that's one way that AI is kind of into the, behind the scenes, I guess. With the cameras, it's cool because AI is now, they're integrating that into the cameras that are in the room, the conferencing cameras. So when you walk into a room, it'll say, it knows, hey, there's a person that's entered the room, and it'll say there's 3 people in the room, or now there's 5 people in the room. And now we're even getting into the really creepy stuff about, I forget what they're calling it now, where the camera can detect whether or not you're angry or you're
Rob is hangry.
Yeah,
Please let him take a break and go get a snack.
Right.
It's like you're in your car where it's like, you've been driving for a while. Please take a break.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So they're doing that with conference rooms now, which is kind of scary, but
And it
interesting
started
at the
in
same
security
time.
cameras. And it's, again, the exciting part is where we're at. Everything is so software based that people are taking what this person's doing or this manufacturer's doing and incorporating it here. It's so cool to be part of that and not have some of the challenges that existed before us. That one thing I think that I'm the most excited about, and you touched on it earlier, was more of the health and wellness focused design stuff where technology is helping that. And this In this space, we have a circadian lighting system. So the light temperature changes throughout the day to mirror the light outside so that your circadian light or your circadian rhythm sort of stays as good as it can be with you being in the office. The sound masking system that Scott mentioned is called Mood Sonic, and it's a biophilic sound masking system. So it inserts nature sounds in the back so that it's bringing more of the outdoors in. And we're only able to do that because that particular device is AI driven. But we're only able to do that because the network capabilities that we have nowadays, the data that we're able to pull from nowadays, and it's I think it's super exciting.
It's a really fun time. Yeah.
With that system, does it also have the capability where you can kind of hotspot and sense if it's sensing people being in the room, what spaces are being used? And the reason why I ask is I'm working with several different developers in multiple product types. So let's say a student housing project, for instance. Developer is getting their biggest bang for the buck because they're the greatest housing on campus or off campus,
Right.
and they have these amenities. It's kind of a wag, if you will, a wild ass guess on what spaces are being used or not, unless you're monitoring those spaces. And so yesterday, when I'm field verifying one of these student housing projects, I went and sat like I was like an 18-year-old student in there and observed, and I was shocked what was being used and what was not. But for technology, I know that this section is not being utilized over here, this collaboration space. So let's rework it and make it something else. And I think that that's something that I would like to see more of in my projects personally, just because it's no longer a wag. It's true data of, hey, this corner over here is being used the most. Why is it being used the most? Well, It turns out it has a beautiful skyline view, and that's why. Well, this is the coolest furniture over here. Well, no, it's because people want to be right there and they
Right.
want to see that view, or they want to people watch or whatever. So do you guys have those types of technologies that you're working with, or is that outside of the wheelhouse?
We have the capabilities to do that here. In a student housing situation, you're going to have wireless access. You're going to have wireless internet that almost every device is going to need to be on. Cisco has the capabilities now with one of their workplace products to monitor devices, whether it's connected to their network or not, see what kind of device it is, and pair it with other devices that move through the space. So if I've got a laptop and my phone and I go through it 4 or 5 times, it's going to know, hey, this is one person with multiple devices. This is how many actual people are there. So you could take something that's really built out for workplace, but repurpose it for something that they just might not be thinking about yet, so that your developer can get the data and in real accurate data.
The data is what it's really all about, because unless you're monitoring the space like I was yesterday, I didn't really understand where those students were hotspotting themselves. And so we had talked about doing these 4-person little meeting spaces, because back in the day, we group studied. Even if we weren't studying on the same thing, I had somebody that was going to be a teacher or a nurse or whatever next to me, and we're studying in the same room just because we wanted that camaraderie. These kiddos these days want individuality. What we're seeing more of is more of those 1-person, 2-people little huddle spaces it's no longer just a conference in there. Maybe it's a lounge chair, because a lot of them were lounging too back with their laptops. And so I think it's very interesting where technology is going and the capabilities that are out there, and the wellness side of it is, I could geek out all day long on that factor, because I think technology also, people can say on the bad side of it, well, it's speeding up things too fast, so it's running processes, or it's taking away the connection one-to-one.
Right.
There's certain things of it, but I think if we're utilizing it in the correct way, it's just like AI, it's really a huge benefit to everybody as a whole.
Yeah.
And I think some people do get a little nervous about technology and say, okay, if this is monitoring every device in this room, it can now see everything I'm doing on my devices. What do you say to people that have that nervousness about it?
To me, it's already happening,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I hate to go completely full hat on you, but everything that you do on your phone is recorded by somebody and being sold to everybody. It just is. I sort of gave up privacy a long time ago because I acknowledged that fact and was like, well, I can't stop it, so I don't care too much.
My brother's in cybersecurity, and he was actually telling me, yeah, okay, that Home Depot app that you have on your phone, when you walk through there, they're actually tracking you on your phone, or Target, or
And how
whoever
much time you
Walmart.
spend in front of certain things.
Yes, the moms, they have us targeted too. man, they'll buy something because on this specific location because their kiddo is with them. And so they rearrange their store based off of that data. And so regardless, we're being tracked.
And I
And
get to the point where we just kind
yeah,
of accept it if
yeah.
we're willing to use the
You're like, yes, I'll
technology.
buy that bracelet.
Right.
Just
Yeah, I think nowadays the only way to really kind of avoid is just to not use the technology, right? I mean, you could choose not to be a part of it, not to use it. It's just super inconvenient, and nobody wants to do that, right? If I could communicate with them, or if I could track them where they're at, so you just kind of just adapt to it. But I think there are ways explaining things like, it's not really a microphone that we're talking about that's in the ceiling that's monitoring that volume level. It's literally just an electronic device that's monitoring a volume level. Maybe some explanation there to kind of comfort people, but like you guys are saying, it's part of every day now. If you get on social media, they know what you're looking at. They know where you're stopping and pausing and watching the videos. And if you're shopping, they know where you're, what aisles you're standing in.
And for me, I'm always like, I mean, what's the worst thing they can get if they're monitoring my phone? It's not like I'm doing
like, yes, I
something
needed
crazy.
toilet paper again.
Yes, like,
Yeah.
thank you for
I'm like,
reminding
thank you.
me. Yeah, that I need to buy it.
Yeah. And I mean, the convenience factor, I think at the end of the day with design right now, the biggest, hottest commodity, amenity, whatever you want to say, it is convenience.
Yeah.
And because giving people back the gift of time is a true blessing. And I tell developers this all the time when they're like, ooh, you're working all these sectors. What amenity is hot? And multifamily versus student versus corporate versus hospitality. What is the hottest amenity? And I always tell people time, giving
Yeah,
people back
that's
time.
great.
That's
Yeah.
my answer because it's true. And so technology that applies to, because technology is really a key to giving people back time. Going back a little bit to the data side of it, by having that data, you're actually able to collect it faster, make decisions faster, and maybe free up something else that your team could have been doing versus analyzing that in-house too. So it pays off. It's a return on investment for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's up to us, like, kind of back to the designing around things like health and wellness and having time back and, the individual in the working environment. I think it's really up to us from a technology design integration for textual, from design, space design, furniture design things. I think it's up to us to make it more inviting and easier space to work in, more convenient, right? All of those things, even as simple as the room that we're sitting in now is not a traditional conference table, right? It's kind of this half moon shape that's focused on a TV on the wall. And that's because there's been a shift in how meetings are held, especially if you've got somebody that is remote or working from another office. If you've got a long traditional boardroom table and that camera's way down at the end and you're sitting at home, you don't feel like part of the conversation. You feel like somebody's watching a meeting going on and you're not involved. There's that whole meeting equity thing where you feel like, hey, I've got something to say. I want my voice heard, but you're not an equal part of the actual room with the rest of the group. I think it's up to us as designers, like I said, on the technology side, on the furniture side, on the space side, to be able to say, okay, what's your goal here? How are we going to make people feel like they are part of the meeting, even though they're in another state or at home or at an airport, right? And with technology and with furniture and space planning, we can do that now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
As we wrap up, we always like to ask our podcast guest a question that has to do with our brand pillars, which is to inspire, educate, and advocate. And we've talked a lot about education today, lessons learned with technology. One of the things I would like to talk to you guys is, if you had all the resources in the world, what would you advocate for our industry?
I'm very passionate about health and wellness. It's somewhat new. I'd say making sure that you take time for yourself. Scott and I actually talk about this a lot. I will be stuck on something and my ADHD will just want to clamp down and just stare at a screen and think about it until my brain goes numb. Recently, I've gone, okay, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to go walk around the block or reset myself. I think that's the thing I would advocate for, is companies being okay with people doing that, taking that mental break for 10 minutes. I think it's becoming more normal now. I also feel like I know a lot of people in the industry that don't feel empowered enough to do that.
We've been really open on this podcast about different either learning differences or things like ADHD or heights bothering people. That's important. I am ADHD and I'm very open about it. And thank you for being open about it because a lot of people are not and they struggle. I am very transparent with my teams. I analyze things really fast. So I may have an answer for something and it's taking somebody else a day to think about. And then they may come to the same conclusion. I call it a superpower, but I get it. When you go fast, a lot of creatives, we are in that category. And that's why we're high performers, we're critical thinkers. And having that mental break is so important. And go take that mental break because if you don't, then you're going to get burnout and you're going to get exhausted. And I think that that's why so many people in our industry are very burnout.
Yeah, I agree. I think even when you are working, like understanding that folks have different environments where they can thrive in, right? During the pandemic, that's something else we learned from a technology standpoint is that, you've got folks that realized from working from home that they are more productive at home and they work better in that environment. And then you have some people that just went to a Starbucks or something to have the chatter in the background because they work better in that environment, right? So the company had the understanding that, hey, when we design our space and we lay this place out, we want to accommodate everybody and figure out a way to accommodate folks like that rather than being in that real traditional stuck. You're going to sit in this cubicle and, from 8 to 5 and you're going to take breaks then and you're going to do this. If you look at our space here, we've got a lounge area up front. We've got a bar area. We've got spaces like this. We've got a health and wellness room to where you can go and shut the door and turn the lights off and relax. We've got open office areas. And that's the reason that the showroom is here and laid out this way is because we want to bring people in and be able to say, hey, these are the different environments that your employees or your folks actually work better in. It's just how can we accommodate that individual, right? And so I think that's definitely important.
I love that. I just moved my office. We went from all working in the same room together, this little room. All four of us desks were touching, like that's what we could get, right? And the way the dynamic changes when you offer these different spaces, or now everybody has their own closed office, and then we have an open office in the middle, a conference room, a separate small meeting space. Like my office is not anywhere near what Tangram Interiors looks like. The showroom here is beautiful, but just that little change and how the dynamics can change within a company to be more productive. Just that on such a heightened level, like what you guys have talked about today and how the showroom is laid out and just really catering to what people need. And not everybody needs the same thing. Just having that technology, the tools to be able to create thriving work environments, because at the end of the day, we spend a lot of our life working. And if we can thrive and be comfortable in our work environment, it will make everything around us thrive and be better in our life.
For sure. Well, thank you guys for your time
Thank
today.
you. Yeah,
this
this
has
is
been an
great.
absolute treat having you guys. And thank you guys for your continued support of our podcast. We appreciate you guys always being here to answer any technology questions for us and providing us this beautiful space to be able to record in. It's an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. And if you haven't checked out the Tangram Interiors showroom here in Dallas, you need to. It's beautiful. And thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Toodaloo.
Thank you.